All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a pretty massive shift happening right under our noses. We're going to explore how old-school legacy market titans are secretly weaponizing cutting-edge technology to maintain and honestly even expand their absolute dominance. Think of it as the ultimate blue-chip playbook. So, to set the stage, think about this. Would Warren Buffett chase the AI hype? We all know his legendary philosophy, right? He notoriously avoids trendy tech momentum, heavily favoring steady, reliable growth over unproven startups. So logically, you'd immediately say, no way. But, well, the actual answer is going to surprise you.
Check out this staggering number, 38.6%. Over a third of Berkshire Hathaway's massive $328 billion portfolio is actually parked in AI-utilizing stocks. It's wild. One of the most famously conservative value portfolios on the planet is deeply, deeply intertwined with artificial intelligence. How is that even possible?
Well, here's our roadmap for today to figure that out. First, the blue chip playbook. Second, Buffett's secret AI portfolio. Third, the power of dividends. Fourth, P&G's defensive moat. And finally, AI and the private label threat. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, the blue chip playbook. Old school meets new tech. To really grasp how these traditional giants operate today, just look at this stat. $1,000 invested in Berkshire Hathaway back in 1965 grew to an unbelievable $48 million by 2025. The crucial point here is that they achieved a mind-blowing 19.7% annual return over 60 years, and they did it by focusing relentlessly on reliable cash flows and rock-solid market positions, not by gambling on unproven tech startups.
Moving on to Section 2. Buffett's secret AI portfolio, the Trojan horse strategy. When you look at the portfolio breakdown, their whole strategy just clicks. You've got Apple sitting at nearly 20%, Coca-Cola at 10.1%, and Alphabet at 8.8%. So instead of throwing VC money at the latest risky AI startups, Berkshire holds massive, concentrated stakes in legacy monopolies. These companies are basically acting as Trojan horses, quietly using AI to completely supercharge the massive moats they already have.
Let's look a bit closer at those tech heavyweights. For Alphabet, Greg Abel essentially quadrupled Berkshire's position, grabbing it at a really cheap PE ratio of just 25.7 compared to the broader tech index. And then there's Apple, sitting on a staggering installed base of 2.5 billion devices worldwide, all ready to roll out Apple Intelligence. It is a brilliant two-pronged attack. Alphabet provides the foundational AI cloud infrastructure and search, while Apple serves as the ultimate, inescapable global distributor for the consumer side of that AI software.
All right, on to Section 3, the power of dividends, yields from the unexpected.
It's super interesting to compare how two absolute legacy giants are defending their turf right now. Coca-Cola committed $1.1 billion to Microsoft Azure AI to completely optimize their supply chains and global marketing. On the other side, Procter & Gamble is heavily layering AI demand sensing and network automation into their logistics to cut down on waste. Look at the irony here. A 20th century soda maker and a 19th century soap company are both leaning heavily on advanced cloud computing and AI to protect their historic empires. So what is the payoff for all this modernization? Well, thanks to a streamlined supply chain and optimized pricing models, Coca-Cola handed Berkshire Hathaway a whopping $816 million in dividends in just 2025 alone. That right there is the raw power of compounding efficiency. But listen, if we want to talk about the absolute royalty of dividends, we have to talk about Procter & Gamble, 136 years. P&G has paid a continuous dividend for over a century, and they've actually increased that payout for 70 consecutive years. I mean, that kind of longevity simply doesn't happen by accident.
Which brings us to Section 4, P&G's defensive moat, the fortress of consumer staples.
Just look at the immense scale of their diversification, from fabric and home care leading at 36%, all the way down to grooming at 8%. We're talking Tide, Pampers, Crest, Gillette, brands that are deeply embedded in our daily routines. This perfectly illustrates a defensive moat in action. They are incredibly insulated from economic recessions simply because they offer such a vast, diversified range of essential everyday household goods. And this highlights a really important concept, the defensive compounder. Think of it as a legacy company with such inelastic consumer demand that they can easily pass inflation costs directly to the customer without losing any market share. P&G's brand equity is so strong they maintain gross margins near 50%. Because honestly, when times get tough, consumers simply won't compromise on the quality of their baby's diapers or their premium toothpaste, right?
Next up, Section 5, AI and the private label threat, modernizing the defenses.
But they aren't totally invincible. Notice how the red line on this chart, showing private label growth, is surging right past the national brands. The old way of doing business just isn't enough anymore. The rising quality of generic, cheaper store brands is putting massive pressure on these traditional giants, especially for highly commoditized stuff like basic paper goods. When inflation bites, people start testing out those good enough generic alternatives. So how does a titan like P&G fight back? With a billion-dollar counterattack. They know historical brand loyalty isn't enough on its own anymore. They're actually cutting around 7,000 non-manufacturing jobs to save $1.25 billion annually. But most importantly, they are going all in on AI-driven logistics and inventory forecasting. They absolutely have to perfectly match the rigorous digital supply chain demands of giant retailers like Walmart just to stay relevant.
Here is how that AI supply chain loop actually plays out in the real world. Step 1, AI demand sensing picks up on incredibly localized purchasing trends, like how a local weather shift might spike demand in a specific zip code. Step 2, network automation kicks in to compress shipping lead times. And Step 3, out-of-stocks are rigorously minimized. The huge takeaway here is that AI guarantees that when a customer reaches for a bottle of Tide, it is perfectly positioned right there on the shelf. They leave absolutely no physical opportunity for a shopper to substitute it with a generic brand.
Finally, Section 6, actionable takeaways. Mastering the playbook.
All right, let's tie all this together with the blue chip playbook summary. First, look for those defensive moats with inelastic demand, the products people buy no matter what the economy is doing. Second, secure compound growth through decades of proven, consistent dividends. And third, keep an eye out for those Trojan horse AI plays. These are the legacy monopolies quietly making huge tech investments to drive massive internal efficiency. Ultimately, the smartest investors right now are finding stability by backing companies that perfectly blend historical brand dominance with ruthless, modern technological efficiency.
Which brings us to our final slide and a pretty provocative question I want to leave you with. Are the world's oldest consumer staples actually our newest tech giants in disguise? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe the safest, smartest way to invest in the disruptive future of AI isn't by hunting for the next shiny Silicon Valley unicorn, but by simply taking a look at the oldest, most reliable companies sitting right there in your pantry. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.